Welcome to Morning Live. Now, government has confirmed that millions of unemployed people who applied for assistance will receive 350 Rand on the 15th of May. Now, this social grant is a temporary measure and will end in October. Social Development Minister Lindiwe Zulu says that unemployed people who do not have access to technology will be assisted by the department's volunteers in applying for this social grant. And joining us now is Busisiwe Memela, the Chief Executive Officer of the South African Social Security Agency, or SASSA, to discuss this. Thanks so much for your time this morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
So let's just start here, Busisiwe, with regard to this unemployment grant of 350 Rand. Talk to us about the criteria, first and foremost, that applicants need to meet in order to qualify for this grant.
The most important thing to emphasize is the fact that those that are currently receiving a grant don't qualify. Because an interesting thing that happened is that we tested the system last week, and of the 91,000 applications we got, 11,000 were people that are already receiving a grant. So nobody who's receiving a grant qualifies for this grant. Even those that are the mothers of children, they would not qualify for the 350. The targeted people, in terms of that would qualify, would definitely be those people that used to be employed in the informal sector that currently are not employed because of the pandemic. So those would be the main target. The second other target would be people that are unemployed and need access to food. The objective of this was to move away from food parcels for us to be able to bring dignity to people, for them to be able to access food without having to run around and be handed food parcels in the street. The other category would obviously be those people that are not able to get a grant now. For example, in instances where a person has just turned 60, and because our offices are not opened yet, and they need access because they've just turned, they're a little older, that they need food, but they cannot access a grant. Those would be the broad categories of people.
So how do those people that you've mentioned, those who qualify and others who are unemployed who may need to verify certain things, how do they actually locate the volunteers in order to apply for these social grants? Ms. Memela?
I think the important thing to note is that the people that are going to be served by volunteers are those people that don't have access to technology. The ones that have access to technology can either send a email to sr.gov.za, and the others can send a WhatsApp message to 0600 123 456 and select SASSA. That's the number that is currently used for COVID, but it also has a section for SASSA. What we're going to be doing is we're going to also be looking at an SSD line. We're just going through a procurement process so that those don't have smartphones can also be able to access, and the volunteers will basically be focusing on the people that are in deep rural areas that don't have access. And those are going to be deployed in partnership with NDA and also in partnership with NYDA. And we'll also look at who are the people in the NGOs in communities that we can work with, including the churches, because in some instances you find that the churches would know as to who are the people that are desperate for food, but they don't know where to go. We're looking at how we can connect with them so that we can make it easier for people.
So, Ms. Memela, what happens to those applicants who do not have bank accounts at this stage or who live in remote areas where they will not have access to banking facilities?
We are looking at also being able to send money on e-wallet or cash send or whatever the process may be, so that we can send people electronic money, because the issue of the actual vouchers is that in many instances they confine people to a specific area, but it's also one of the systems that we're looking at implementing, being able to give people access to vouchers. But the initial stage will be for us to give people money into their bank accounts, give people electronic money, which would be an e-money, and then subsequent to that, we can look at issue of vouchers.
So how many people will actually be able to access this funding, a total number, if you will, and also will your system be able to meet this particular requirement to pay those people by the 15th of this month?
What we are looking at is the total budget that we have is about 3 billion, which therefore means that obviously we'll not be able to get to everybody on month one. And the view is that we should be able to at least get to between 500 to 700,000 people on the month one. The advantage with this process that makes it different from our current grant process is that once we've already approved a person, we don't have to wait until the end of the month. As we approve people, we will then be able to pay because of just the different process that we use. But obviously, we'll not be able to get to all the people at the same time. But we need to start the application process so that we can make sure that by the 15th of May, we can begin to pay some of the people.
So assuming that the systems aren't necessarily ready to work as effectively as you would wish, will you be paying people retrospectively? In other words, if someone qualifies and you can't pay them for the month of May, when you do make subsequent payments, will you then also pay them the monies for the month of May?
No, the money will not be paid retrospectively. The one thing that is different is that the process of approving the grant is actually going to be automated, unlike what we use for our normal grants, whereby when a person applies, you apply in paper, you have to apply in our offices. We've automated the front end so that we can make sure that those that qualify can be approved quickly. The most important thing to note is that those people that are getting any other kind of grant should not apply because they would not qualify. For example, people that are getting UIF, because that's the database against which we will track, verify to make sure that people are not on UIF. We'll also be linked with Home Affairs to make sure that we can also verify as to whether the IDs that people are submitting are correct IDs. Will also be linked to SARS, and those people that are students and currently are getting their money from NSFAS would also not qualify. So the idea is to link up with all these different databases so that we can fast track the process and make it quicker.
What sort of measures do you have in place, Ms. Memela, at the moment to try and curb corruption during these processes? Because we already saw with the food parcels, there's already clear evidence out there that there is some corrupt activity afoot. So what measures do you have in place?
In terms of the measures that we have in place is to make sure that the processes and the systems are auditable, and they're going to be audited by the AGSA to make sure that we do what it is that we're supposed to do. And the fact that the process is automated makes it more much easier to actually monitor to make sure that money doesn't go to a few and not all those that would have applied.
And are you currently looking into any allegations of fraud and corruption, at least with the food parcels to this point? Because there are many stories and anecdotal evidence afoot regarding this. We look, for example, at Mangaung, the situation there with the mayor, where she was accused by councillors of actually hogging those food parcels, or perhaps not sending out what was said would be said out, and that the food parcels were very inferior to what was indicated. Are you aware of that? Is anything being done about that?
Not that it hasn't been brought to my attention. The only one that we are investigating is one of Mpumalanga, and we've already asked our investigation and fraud team to actually go and investigate as to whether anything was amiss in that one. I haven't received anything else.
And then on that score, who actually determines, whether these food parcels can be diverted? Because again, in Tabanchu, Ms. Memela, according to the councillors there, they were so disgusted by the food parcels allegedly given by the mayor of Mangaung Metro that they then took the decision as the councillors to divert those parcels to one family. Who actually has authority here? Who makes these decisions?
I must clarify that in terms of the food parcels that we as SASSA actually do, we don't give food parcels to anybody else except to the person that applied for the food parcel. The one process is to deliver to people in their homes in instances where people cannot reach us, or our employees actually become part of the process, because with us, you have to sign off to say you have received the food parcel. So there's no way we can give food parcels to someone else who is not the person that has applied for it.
Memela, I put it to you that is currently what is happening. This is why you are investigating that case in Mpumalanga, because allegedly this is what's happening. Food parcels are being delivered to individuals in certain instances who then seem to have the power and authority to determine who actually gets a food parcel or not.
I must emphasize that the process that we use is definitely different. And I don't know, the one that we're actually investigating in Mpumalanga, it's a claim that a truck was actually parked at somebody else's house. And so far we haven't found proof of that. But the claim in relation to that was that people came to actually get the food from the person who's a person of political authority. And that's why we're investigating. But it's the only one that has come to our attention, because in terms of our process, we shouldn't be able to give food to anybody else except to those people that actually qualify and have applied for the food parcel.
Well, we're out of time, Ms. Memela, but I can tell you SABC News actually ran that story about what happened in Mangaung. We tried to speak, at least I did try to speak to Oli Mlamleli, the mayor of Mangaung, who was accused of being the one who actually showed one picture and distributed very inferior food parcels. So maybe we need to bring that to your attention, because there are many other allegations similar to that across the country where those food parcels have definitely been allegedly delivered to individuals and not to the people they need to go to. But we'll try and speak to you about that offline so we can make you aware of it, Ms. Memela. Thanks for your time this morning. CEO of SASSA talking to us about the criteria for the grant to assist unemployed people for the next 6 months, as well as people still needing food parcels and other SASSA issues. And of course, we'll talk more about that later on. We'll give you more of that information. But we're going to take news headlines.